The transport ship Meridian's Edge shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, its hull groaning under the stress of the emergency exit. Captain Sarah gripped the armrests of her command chair, watching the swirling colors of folded space collapse into the stark blackness dotted with distant stars. The ship's emergency klaxons wailed through the corridors, painting everything in angry red light. "Report," Sarah barked, her voice cutting through the chaos on the bridge. Lieutenant Commander Torres hunched over his console, fingers dancing across holographic displays. "Hull breach in sections 7 through 9. Life support is holding, but we've lost main propulsion. The hyperspace motivator is completely fried." Sarah's jaw tightened. 3 months into their deep space exploration mission, and they were stranded in uncharted territory. The Meridian's Edge was one of humanity's long-range exploratory vessels, equipped with the latest technology and crewed by Earth's finest. But even the best technology could fail when pushed beyond its limits. "Any inhabited systems nearby?" she asked, already knowing the answer would complicate things. Ensign Park looked up from the navigation station, his young face pale. "One system, Captain, 3 planets, but our long-range sensors are picking up artificial structures on the second world. It's not in any of our databases." An alien civilization. Sarah had dreamed of this moment since joining the Space Exploration Corps 20 years ago, but not under these circumstances. First contact protocols demanded careful preparation, diplomatic teams, and months of planning. Instead, they were limping toward an unknown world with a crippled ship and no choice but to ask for help. "Set course for the inhabited planet," Sarah ordered, "and prep a first contact package. We're about to meet our neighbors." The journey to the alien world took 18 hours with their damaged engines. During that time, Sarah studied everything their sensors could gather about the planet below. It was a beautiful world of blue oceans and green continents, with sprawling cities that gleamed like jewels across the surface. The architecture was unlike anything in human databases, flowing, organic structures that seemed to grow from the landscape rather than impose upon it. As they entered orbit, Sarah's communications officer turned to her with wide eyes. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's in perfect English." On screen, the flickered, then displayed the image of a being that made Sarah's breath catch. The alien was tall and graceful, with features that were almost feline but undeniably intelligent. Golden eyes regarded them with what seemed like curiosity rather than hostility. When it spoke, its voice was melodious despite the underlying growl. "Welcome, humans. I am Prime Hunter of the Dominion. We have monitored your approach and detected your vessel's distress. You seek aid." Sarah stepped forward, her heart pounding. "I am Captain Sarah of the Earth vessel Meridian's Edge. Our ship has suffered critical damage, and we respectfully request assistance with repairs." His head tilted slightly, studying her with those penetrating golden eyes. "You are far from your home territory, Captain. The nearest human colonies are many light years distant. What brings you to our domain?" "Exploration," Sarah answered honestly. "We seek to understand the galaxy and our place in it. We come in peace." A sound that might have been amusement came from the alien leader. "Peace, an interesting concept. Very well, Captain. You may land at the coordinates we are transmitting. But know this, you enter space under our protection and our laws. Your ship and crew are now our responsibility." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Sarah turned to her crew, seeing her own mixture of excitement and apprehension reflected in their faces. "Well, people," she said, forcing confidence into her voice, "looks like we're about to make history." The landing coordinates led them to a vast spaceport outside one of the alien cities. As the Meridian's Edge descended through the atmosphere on emergency power, Sarah got her first close look at architecture. The buildings really did seem to grow from the ground, their surfaces rippling with patterns that hurt the eyes to follow. Gardens and parks were woven throughout the urban landscape, creating a harmony between civilization and nature that Earth's cities had never achieved. The spaceport itself was enormous, filled with ships of designs that human understanding of aerodynamics. Some looked like living creatures frozen in metal and composite, while others resembled crystalline formations that somehow achieved flight. The Meridian's Edge, with its angular human design, looked crude and primitive by comparison. As they touched down, Sarah could see a delegation waiting for them. They were indeed feline in appearance but scaled up to human height and build. Their fur ranged from golden amber to deep brown, marked with intricate patterns that seemed to shift in the light. They moved with a predator's grace, each step calculated and purposeful. Sarah selected a small diplomatic team to accompany her: Tours, Dr. Maria Santos from the medical bay, and Chief Engineer Wu. They donned their formal dress uniforms and checked their translation devices, though it seemed they had already solved the language barrier. The airlock cycled, and Sarah stepped onto an alien world for the first time in her life. The air was sweet with unfamiliar scents, something like cinnamon mixed with ozone and growing things. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth normal, making each step feel bouncy and strange. But what struck her most was the silence of the delegation as they approached. There were 12 of them, arranged in what was clearly a formal formation. Stood at their head, impressive in person as he had been on screen. His fur was a rich golden color marked with dark stripes, and he wore what appeared to be ceremonial armor made from some dark metal that seemed to absorb light. But Sarah's attention was drawn to the smaller figures partially hidden behind the adults. Young, she realized, cubs. They peered at the humans with wide, curious eyes, their ears twitching with nervous energy. Captain said, stepping forward, his voice carried easily across the open space. "Welcome to Prime. I am honored to meet the first humans to set foot upon our world." Sarah bowed slightly, a gesture she hoped would be interpreted as respectful. "The honor is ours, Prime Hunter. We are grateful for your assistance in our time of need." His golden eyes studied her face intently. "Your gratitude is noted. However, there are matters we must discuss before repairs to your vessel can begin. Our traditions demand it." He gestured toward the delegation behind him. "These are the members of the Hunt Council and—" his gaze flicked briefly to the young ones. "These are cubs of the Sunset Pride. They have come to witness this historic moment." One of the cubs, braver than the rest, stepped forward. It couldn't have been more than adolescent age, with silver fur and bright blue eyes that sparked with intelligence and mischief. Before any of the adults could stop it, the young spoke. "Are you really warriors? You look so small and weak. Elder says humans are soft and would break if we played with them." The comment created immediate tension among the adult. Several hissed in what was clearly disapproval, and ears flattened against his head. But Sarah surprised everyone by laughing. "We might look soft," she said, addressing the cub directly, "but humans are tougher than we appear. We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and learning to live in the vacuum of space. What's your name, young one?" The cub's eyes widened at being addressed directly. "I am Kay of the Sunset Pride. Are you truly the pack leader of your ship?" "I am," Sarah confirmed. "And you're very observant to notice our size difference. We humans have learned to use our minds and tools to overcome our physical limitations." Before the conversation could continue, another member of the Hunt Council stepped forward. This was larger than, with dark brown fur marked by scars that spoke of battles fought and won. His yellow eyes held none of curious warmth. "I am war leader of the Northern Reaches," he said, his voice a low growl. "The cubs speak truth, though without proper courtesy. Humans are small, weak creatures. Your presence here is tolerated only by the Prime Hunter's will." The tension on the landing platform became palpable. Sarah felt her diplomatic training kick in, searching for a response that wouldn't escalate the situation. But Dr. Santos spoke first. "Strength comes in many forms," the medical officer said calmly. "We may lack your physical power, but we've crossed the void between stars to reach this place. That requires a different kind of strength." His ears twitched with what might have been amusement or irritation. "Pretty words, small healer. But words do not hunt prey or defend territory. When crisis comes, your weakness will be revealed." Raised a hand, and the war leader fell silent. "Enough! These are our guests, and they will be treated with honor." His gaze found Sarah again. "Captain, there is much to discuss regarding your stay among us, but first your injured must be tended and your vessel evaluated." Sarah nodded gratefully. "We have several crew members who were hurt during the emergency exit from hyperspace. Dr. Santos is our chief medical officer, but we would welcome any assistance you can provide." "Our healers will work alongside yours," agreed. Then unexpectedly he looked down at the cubs. "Kay, you and your clutch mates will accompany the humans to their ship. It will be educational." The young's eyes lit up with excitement but stepped forward again. "Prime Hunter, is it wise to expose our young to these strangers? We know nothing of their true nature." "Which is precisely why they should learn," replied firmly. The Cubs represent our future. They must understand the galaxy beyond our world. His golden eyes found Sarah's. Unless you object to their presence, Captain. Sarah looked at the eager young faces and made a decision that would change everything. They're welcome aboard the Meridian's Edge. Perhaps we can all learn from each other. The tour of the human ship proved to be an eye-opening experience for both species. The Cubs were fascinated by human technology, particularly the angular, mechanical designs that contrasted so sharply with their own organic-looking equipment. Kay, who seemed to be the unofficial leader of the group, peppered Sarah with questions about everything from the artificial gravity generators to the food processors. Your ship thinks like a tool, the young observed as they walked through the engineering section. Our vessels think like living things. Why do you make them so rigid? Chief Engineer Wu, who had been explaining the hyperspace motivator's function, paused to consider the question. Our approach is based on precision and redundancy. Every system has backups and every component has a specific function. It's efficient. But not adaptable, another cub noted. This one was smaller than Kay, with reddish fur and green eyes. What happens when your tool ship encounters something it was not made for? Sometimes it breaks, Sarah admitted honestly. Like now, but that's why we have engineers like Chief Wu to fix what's broken and improve what works. The Cubs exchanged glances that seemed to carry meaning beyond their words. Sarah was beginning to realize that communication involved more than just speech. Their ear positions, tail movements, and subtle scent markers all conveyed information that human senses couldn't detect. In the medical bay, Dr. Santos was working alongside a healer named Ra to treat the injured crew members. The alien medical techniques were fascinating to observe. Where human medicine relied on instruments and pharmaceuticals, the approach seemed to involve some form of bioelectric manipulation that accelerated natural healing. Your bodies are remarkably resilient, Ra commented as she examined Ensign Park's broken arm. The bone density is lower than ours, but the healing response is quite robust, and your neural pathways, most intriguing. Dr. Santos looked up from her own patient. What do you mean about our neural pathways? Your brain structures process information differently than ours, the healer explained. Where we think in pattern flows and scent memories, you appear to think in linear sequences and visual constructs. It explains much about your technology. Kay, who had been listening intently, suddenly spoke up. Is that why you make tools instead of partners? Both doctors turned to look at the young. I'm not sure I understand, Dr. Santos said. Your ship, your devices, they are tools that obey you. Our ships are partners that work with us. Your minds make servants, our minds make families. The observation was startling in its clarity. Sarah found herself looking at her own ship with new eyes, seeing the rigid command structure and mechanical precision that had always seemed natural. The approach to technology was apparently as different from theirs as their bodies were. The tour continued to the observation deck, where the Cubs got their first clear view of there from space. The sight seemed to affect them deeply. Their ears drooped, and their tails went still as they stared at the blue and green sphere turning slowly below. It's so small, one of them whispered. From here, all the territories look like one land. Space has a way of changing perspective, Sarah said gently. When you see your whole world as a single sphere among the stars, borders seem less important. Kay turned to look at her with those penetrating blue eyes. Is that why you left your own small sphere, to find larger perspectives? Partly, Sarah admitted. We humans have always been driven to explore, to push beyond the boundaries of what we know. Sometimes it gets us into trouble, like today. But it also leads to moments like this, meeting you and your people, learning that we're not alone in the universe. The young was quiet for a moment, then asked, What will you do when your ship is repaired? Will you return to your small sphere? Eventually, yes, but first we'll continue exploring. There's so much to see and learn. And you're not afraid of the dangers in the dark between stars? Sarah considered the question carefully. Fear is healthy, it keeps you alive. But if you let fear control you, you never discover what lies beyond the next hill. Humans decided long ago that the unknown was worth the risk. The conversation was interrupted by Chief Wu's voice over the intercom. Captain, we have a problem. The hyperdrive damage is worse than we thought. We're going to need specialized components to make repairs, and some of our injured need more medical attention than we can provide here. Sarah's heart sank. She had hoped for a quick repair and a graceful departure, but it seemed they would be guests of the for much longer than anticipated. Who had been touring the ship with them heard the announcement as well. His ears flicked thoughtfully as he considered the implications. "It appears you will be staying among us for some time," he said. "This creates complications." "What kind of complications?" Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew. "The Hunt Council must vote on extended contact with your species. Not all among us share my curiosity about outsiders. Some, like War Leader, believe contact with aliens weakens our people." As if summoned by his name, his voice crackled over the communication system. "Prime Hunter, you are needed at the landing platform immediately. There has been a development." Sarah and exchanged glances before heading quickly for the airlock. The cubs followed, their earlier playfulness replaced by tension that seemed to radiate from their small bodies. Outside the ship, they found waiting with an additional group of warriors. These were different from the ceremonial delegation that had greeted them, harder-looking, with scars and weapons that spoke of serious military experience. "Prime Hunter," said formally, "I have consulted with the elders of the war councils. They have concerns about these aliens remaining in our territory for an extended period." "What concerns?" asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "Contamination," replied bluntly. "Already the cubs cluster around these soft creatures like they are new toys. Our young ones should learn strength from warriors, not weakness from alien pets." Sarah felt her temper flare but kept her expression neutral. Beside her, she noticed the cubs bristling with indignation, their ears flat against their heads. "The humans are our guests," said firmly. "They will be treated with honor." "Honor, yes," agreed, "but also caution. I propose a test." "What sort of test?" Sarah asked, stepping forward despite his warning growl. His yellow eyes fixed on her with predatory intensity. "A traditional challenge. If you truly possess the strength you claim, prove it in combat, single combat by our laws." "Combat?" Sarah's mind raced through the implications. "I'm not a soldier war leader, I'm an explorer." "All humans are what they need to be," said. "Or they are nothing at all. Accept the challenge and win honor for your people. Refuse and admit your weakness." Step between them. "This is unnecessary. The humans have shown no hostile intent." "Intent is irrelevant. Capability is everything." The war leader's gaze never left Sarah's face. "What say you, Captain? Will you prove your worth, or will you hide behind words and weakness?" Sarah looked around at the assembled. Some seemed eager for the confrontation, while others appeared uncomfortable with the challenge. The cubs were watching her with wide eyes, and she realized that her answer would shape their understanding of humanity forever. "I accept," she said quietly. The arena was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. Carved from the living rock of a mountain face, it formed a natural amphitheater with seats that could accommodate thousands of spectators. The fighting floor was covered with a sand-like substance that shifted colors as she walked across it, responding to pressure and movement with ripples of light. Word of the challenge had spread quickly through the population. The arena was filling with curious observers, their golden eyes reflecting the afternoon sun like points of flame. Sarah had been given an hour to prepare while the formal protocols were observed. Dr. Santos had insisted on examining her one more time, checking for any injuries that might affect her performance. "Sarah, are you sure about this? We don't know what their combat customs involve." "I don't have a choice," Sarah replied, adjusting the simple fighting clothes they had provided. "If I back down now, it will confirm everything believes about human weakness. Our entire crew's safety might depend on this." Chief Wu looked up from the tablet he'd been studying. "I've been analyzing physiology based on our scans. They're stronger than us, faster, and they have natural weapons. But they're also heavier, which might affect their agility. Any other advantages I might have? Possibly. Their high muscle density suggests they might tire more quickly in a prolonged fight. And human flexibility is actually superior. Our joint structure allows for a greater range of motion." It wasn't much, but Sarah filed the information away. Every edge would matter. Torres approached with a grim expression. "Captain, I've been monitoring communication frequencies. There's a lot of debate about this challenge. Some are calling it a mistake. Others are eager to see what humans can do." "And the cubs? They're in the front row with. Kay has been asking everyone if you're going to be hurt." Sarah's heart clenched. The young had been nothing but kind to her, and now she was about to engage in combat that might shatter their trust in humanity. A horn sounded across the arena, its deep note echoing off the stone walls. Sarah took a deep breath and walked toward the center of the fighting area. Was already waiting for her. Up close, his size was even more intimidating. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, his muscles rippling beneath dark brown fur marked with battle scars. His hands ended in retractable claws that gleamed like polished metal, and his canine teeth were clearly visible when he smiled. "You are brave, little human," he said as Sarah approached. "I respect courage even when it leads to defeat." "The fight isn't over yet," Sarah replied, trying to project more confidence than she felt. Stood between them, his role apparently that of referee. "This challenge is fought under the ancient laws," he announced, his voice carrying clearly through the arena. "Combat continues until yield, incapacitation, or death. May honor guide your actions." He stepped back, leaving Sarah and facing each other across 20 feet of shifting, luminous sand. "Begin," commanded. Didn't charge immediately as Sarah had expected. Instead, he circled her slowly, his predator's gait eating up ground with fluid grace. Sarah turned to keep facing him, acutely aware of her own limitations. She was fit for a starship captain, but she wasn't a trained warrior. "You fight like prey," observed, continuing his stalking circle. "Always watching, always afraid. Predators do not hesitate." Sarah didn't respond, focusing instead on reading his movement patterns. The war leader favored his right side slightly, possibly compensating for an old injury. His balance was perfect, but his weight distribution suggested he would attack high first, relying on his natural height advantage. When finally struck, it was with lightning speed. His claws swept toward Sarah's throat in a blur of motion that would have been impossible to follow without adrenaline sharpening her senses. She dropped low and rolled right, feeling the wind of his passage ruffle her hair. Sarah came up in a crouch and immediately had to dive again as backhand sweep nearly caught her ribs. The crowd roared approval at the war leader's aggressive display, but Sarah noticed something important. He was fighting to end the battle quickly, relying on overwhelming force rather than technique. She stayed low and mobile, using her smaller size to slip under attacks that would have crushed a larger opponent. Frustration began to show as blow after blow failed to connect. His movements became slightly less precise, his breathing a little heavier. "Stand and fight," he snarled, launching another series of claw strikes that forced Sarah to backpedal rapidly. "I am fighting," she replied, ducking a swing that would have taken her head off. "Just not the way you expected." For the first time, doubt flickered in his yellow eyes. Sarah pressed her advantage, moving inside his reach where his longer limbs became a disadvantage. She struck quickly at pressure points Chief Wu had identified, targeting nerve clusters and joint connections. Her hits barely seemed to affect the massive, but they were accumulating damage. His left arm began to drop slightly, and his stance shifted to compensate for reduced mobility in his right leg. The crowd's roar had changed tone. What had begun as excitement for their champion was becoming uncertainty as the small human continued to avoid destruction. In the front row, Sarah could see the cubs watching with intense focus, their ears pricked forward and eyes wide. Stepped back, breathing hard. "You fight like a scavenger," he said, but there was grudging respect in his voice, taking small bites while avoiding the true battle. "I fight to win," Sarah replied, "just like any good predator would." The war leader's ears flicked at that, a sign that her words had struck home. In culture, calling someone a good predator was apparently high praise. Changed tactics, abandoning his overwhelming assault for a more calculated approach. Now the real fight began. The war leader's new strategy was immediately apparent. He would use his superior strength and reach to control the distance between them, preventing Sarah from getting close enough to target his weak points while keeping her within range of his devastating claw strikes. Sarah found herself constantly retreating, unable to close the distance as improved technique kept her at bay. His claws whistled through the air inches from her face and torso, each near miss a reminder of how quickly the fight could end. But human endurance was proving its worth. Whilst muscle density gave him tremendous power, it also required more energy to maintain. Sarah could see sweat beginning to mat the fur around his neck and shoulders, while her own breathing remained controlled. The turning point came when overextended on a particularly vicious overhead strike. Sarah stepped aside and grabbed his extended arm, using his own momentum to throw him past her. The move was straight out of human martial arts, using an opponent's strength against them rather than meeting it head-on. Hit the sand hard and rolled, coming up quickly but off balance. For the first time in the fight, Sarah had the initiative. She pressed forward aggressively, no longer content to simply avoid damage. Her attacks were precise and targeted. A strike to his solar plexus doubled him over, followed by a knee to his exposed temple that sent him staggering. Sarah didn't have the power to knock him unconscious, but she could disorient him enough to create opportunities. The crowd had gone silent. Their champion, the mighty war leader of the northern reaches, was being systematically dismantled by a creature half his size. Sarah could feel thousands of golden eyes fixed on her, watching something that shouldn't have been possible. Roaring his frustration as he launched a desperate final assault, his claws extended to their full length, gleaming like sword blades in the afternoon sun. Sarah knew this was her moment, win now, or not at all. She waited until the last possible second, then dropped flat to the sand as Strike passed over her. Rolling between his legs, she came up behind him and locked her arm around his thick neck in a submission hold. For a moment they were frozen like that, the massive warrior held in place by the small human's grip. Sarah knew she couldn't maintain the hold for long against his superior strength, but she didn't need to. The psychological impact was enough. "Yield," she said quietly, her voice carrying in the sudden silence of the arena. His body trembled with the effort of breaking free, but Sarah had positioned the hold perfectly. Any movement would cut off his air supply completely. Slowly, reluctantly, he tapped twice against her arm. Sarah released him immediately and stepped back, her hands raised to show the fight was over. Remained on his knees for a moment, breathing heavily before rising to face her. "You fight with cunning," he said finally. "I underestimated your species' capacity for adaptation." "We're good at surviving," Sarah replied. "It served us well." His ears twitched, and for the first time his expression showed something approaching approval. "Perhaps there is strength in you after all, small predator." The arena erupted in sound as the crowd finally found their voices. Some roared approval for the unexpected victory, while others seemed stunned by what they had witnessed. But Sarah's attention was drawn to the front row, where 6 young cubs were standing and cheering with unbridled enthusiasm. Kay's voice rose above the others. "She won, the human won. Did you see how fast she moved?" Approached them both, his golden eyes thoughtful. "The challenge is concluded with honor," he announced formally. "Captain has proven her worth in combat." Sarah nodded, trying not to show how exhausted she was. Every muscle in her body ached, and she could feel bruises forming where attacks had come close to connecting. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," said, "the Hunt Council will vote on whether to grant your people extended sanctuary while your ship is repaired." His gaze flicked too. "I suspect the war leader's opinion may have changed." Straightened, his warrior's pride reasserting itself despite his defeat. "The human fought with honor, her people may stay." He paused, then added grudgingly, "Perhaps we can learn from their unconventional approaches to conflict." As they walked toward the arena exit, Sarah became aware of small forms shadowing her steps. The cubs had somehow gotten past the adult supervision and were following her like a pack of eager puppies. "That was amazing," Kay said, bouncing along beside her. "You fought like Stormwind, all flowing and striking and impossible to catch." "The war leader is the strongest fighter in our territories," added the red-furred cub. "No one has ever defeated him in single combat." Sarah looked down at their excited faces and felt a weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. "Fighting should be a last resort," she told them gently. "I only did it because your people needed to understand that humans aren't weak, even if we're different from you." "But you were so fast," another cub insisted, "and clever you made him defeat himself." "That's what humans do best," Sarah said. "We think our way through problems instead of just using force." Kay's blue eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Will you teach us about human thinking and fighting and everything?" The request caught Sarah off guard. That would be up to your parents and leaders. We're only here temporarily." "But you could stay longer," Kay said with the innocent persistence of youth. "If you wanted to, if we asked you to." Sarah didn't know how to respond to that. The idea of remaining on this world, of building relationships with these remarkable people, was more tempting than she wanted to admit, but she had responsibilities to her crew and her mission. As they reached the arena exit, was waiting with several other members of the Hunt Council. Their expressions were unreadable, but Sarah sensed that her victory had created ripples that would extend far beyond the fighting arena. "Captain," said formally, "the Council would like to speak with you about the future." Sarah nodded, but her attention was drawn to the cubs clustered around her feet. Somehow, in the span of a single day, these young aliens had become important to her. The thought of leaving them behind when the Meridian's edge was repaired created an unexpected ache in her chest. She was beginning to understand that this first contact would change more than just diplomatic relations between their species. It was changing her in ways she was only starting to comprehend. The Hunt Council chambers were carved from the same living rock as the arena, but where the fighting ground had been harsh and utilitarian, this space breathed ancient majesty. Crystalline formations grew from the walls, casting prismatic light across surfaces covered in intricate murals depicting history. Sarah found herself walking through a gallery of conquest and exploration, seeing how her hosts had built their civilization across multiple worlds and star systems. The council members sat in a rough circle, their positions apparently determined by complex social hierarchies that Sarah couldn't yet decipher. Occupied what was clearly the primary seat, while sat to his right with fresh bandages covering the wounds from their combat. The other 11 council members represented different regions and specialties. She could identify what appeared to be scientists, military leaders, and administrators by their dress and bearing. "Captain," began once she had taken the seat offered to her, "your victory today has created complications." "What kind of complications?" Sarah asked, though she suspected the answer wouldn't be simple. An elderly with silver fur spoke up. Her voice carried the weight of authority and age. "I am Elder Mystic N, keeper of the old ways. In our traditions, combat victory grants certain rights and obligations. By defeating our war leader in honorable single combat, you have earned a place in our social hierarchy." Sarah felt a chill of apprehension. What does that mean exactly? Himself answered, his tone matter-of-fact despite his recent defeat. "It means you are no longer merely a guest seeking aid. You have proven yourself a warrior of standing. By law and custom, you now have the right to claim territory to form a pack to hunt in our lands." "I'm not looking for territory or hunting rights," Sarah said quickly. "My people just need repairs to our ship so we can continue our mission." And leaned forward, her ancient eyes studying Sarah intently. "The law does not care what you seek, young warrior. You have earned these rights through blood and skill. They cannot be simply dismissed." Raised a hand, and the other council members fell silent. "The situation is complex, Captain. Your presence here was already unprecedented, the first contact with an alien species in our recorded history. But your victory has elevated you beyond the status of mere visitor. You are now, by our laws, a pack leader." Sarah's mind raced through the implications. "What does that mean for my crew, for our repairs?" "Your crew would be considered your pack," explained another council member, this one wearing robes that marked him as some sort of administrator. "They would fall under your protection and authority. As for repairs, a pack leader may claim whatever resources they need to maintain their territory." It was an elegant solution to their problem, but Sarah could sense undercurrents she didn't understand. "There's something you're not telling me. What's the catch?" His features twisted into what might have been a smile. "Clever. Yes, there are obligations that come with these rights. As a pack leader, you would be responsible for defending your territory and pack. You would owe loyalty to the Dominion. And—" He paused, glancing at before continuing. "You would be expected to take custody of any cubs assigned to your protection." Sarah's heart skipped. "Cubs?" And nodded solemnly. "It is the way. Young ones learn by serving with different pack leaders throughout their development. They gain experience, wisdom, and perspective. It has been our tradition for—" "But I'm not," Sarah protested. "I don't understand your customs, your ways of raising young. How could I possibly be responsible for your cubs?" "Perhaps," said a new voice from the chamber entrance, "that is exactly why it would be valuable." Sarah turned to see a she hadn't met before, younger than most of the council members, with unusual silver fur marked by distinctive blue stripes. The newcomer moved with quiet confidence, and Sarah noticed how the other council members deferred to their presence. "Captain," said formally, Allow me to present Archive Keeper, scholar of xenobiology and cultural adaptation. They have been studying your species since your arrival. Took a seat in the circle, their silver ears twitching thoughtfully. Captain, your people represent something unprecedented in our experience, sapient beings who have achieved space travel through purely technological means, rather than the biosymbiotic relationships we employ. Your minds work differently, approach problems from angles we would never consider. Like the combat techniques you used against, N added. No would have thought to use an opponent's strength against them in such a manner. It was educational. Sarah began to understand where this was leading. You want the cubs to learn human perspectives. Not just perspectives, said. Methods of thinking, problem-solving approaches. Your species has survived in a hostile galaxy through adaptation and innovation rather than strength and territorial dominance. Those are skills our young ones should understand. Shifted uncomfortably. It is true that your unconventional methods proved effective. Perhaps there is wisdom in exposing our cubs to different ways of thinking. Sarah looked around the circle of alien faces, seeing a mixture of curiosity, concern, and hope. The weight of the moment was overwhelming. They were asking her to help shape the next generation of an alien species she had met only hours before. Which cubs? She asked quietly. 6 from the Sunset Pride, replied. They have already expressed enthusiasm for learning about human ways, K, N, L, R, and little a. They are at various stages of development, from pre-adolescent to young adult. Sarah's heart clenched as she recognized the names. The same cubs who had toured her ship, who had cheered for her in the arena, who had looked at her with wonder and curiosity rather than fear or hostility. What would my responsibilities be? Leaned forward. You would guide their education, expose them to human knowledge and methods, help them understand different ways of viewing the universe. In return, they would serve as cultural bridges, helping both our species understand each other better. And if I refuse? Then you remain an honored guest, said simply. Your ship will be repaired and you will be free to continue your mission, but the opportunity for deeper cultural exchange will be lost. Sarah closed her eyes, thinking of her crew, her mission, her responsibilities to Earth's Space Exploration Corps. Then she thought of Kay's eager questions, of the wonder in young eyes as they explored human technology, of the chance to build understanding between two very different species. If I accept, she said slowly, how long would this arrangement last? Until the cubs reach maturity, N replied. Approximately 2 of your years. 2 years? Sarah's mission was supposed to last 5 years total, but spending nearly half of it on one world would require significant justification to her superiors. On the other hand, the first successful long-term cultural exchange with an alien species would be worth more than any discoveries she might make in the depths of space. I need to discuss this with my crew, Sarah said finally. This decision affects all of us. Nodded approvingly. A wise leader consults their pack. You have 1 day to decide. Tomorrow at sunset we will require your answer. As Sarah left the council chambers, she found herself surrounded once again by the 6 cubs who had somehow evaded adult supervision. They bounced around her like excited puppies, their questions coming in rapid bursts. Are you going to stay? Kay asked, her blue eyes bright with hope. Will you teach us to fight like you? Added N, a stocky cub with brown fur marked by distinctive white patches. Can we learn to fly your starship? Chimed in L, whose silver coat shimmered in the setting sun. Sarah held up her hands for quiet. I haven't made a decision yet. This is something I need to think about very carefully. Littla, the smallest of the group, tugged on Sarah's uniform jacket. Don't you like us? The innocent question hit Sarah like a physical blow. Of course I like you. You're all wonderful. But making this decision isn't just about what I want. It's about what's best for everyone. A lanky adolescent with red fur spoke up thoughtfully. Our parents say that the best decisions are the hardest ones. Easy choices usually mean you're not thinking deep enough. The wisdom in the young voice surprised Sarah. That's very true. Has your family talked to you about what this arrangement would mean? They say we would learn to see the galaxy through human eyes, R replied. This cub was quiet and observant, with unusual golden fur that almost seemed to glow in the fading light. That we would become bridges between our peoples. And that we would help you understand us too, added L. Learning works both ways. Sarah looked at their eager faces and felt her resolve wavering. These weren't just alien children. They were individuals with their own personalities, hopes, and dreams. Kay with her boundless curiosity, N with his competitive spirit, L with her technical aptitude, with her thoughtful nature, R with his quiet wisdom, and Littla with her fearless enthusiasm. "We should go back to my ship," Sarah said. "I want you to meet more of my crew, and I need to talk to them about all of this." The cubs cheered, and Sarah found herself at the center of a small parade as they made their way back to the landing platform. Along the way, she noticed how others reacted to the sight of their young ones clustering around the human. Some seemed approving, others concerned, but all were clearly fascinated by the unprecedented situation. Back aboard the Meridian's Edge, Sarah called a senior staff meeting while the cubs explored the ship with renewed enthusiasm. Their earlier tour had been formal and controlled. Now they moved through the corridors like they belonged there, pointing out interesting details to each other and asking questions about everything they encountered. "So," Chief Wu said as the senior staff gathered in the ship's conference room, "we've gone from refugees seeking repairs to potential foster parents for alien children. That's quite a development." Dr. Santos looked thoughtful. From a medical standpoint, it would be an incredible opportunity to study development and psychology. The data we could gather would be invaluable for future contact with other species. "And from an engineering perspective," Wu added, "their biotech could revolutionize our understanding of adaptive systems. Some of their ships literally grow new components when damaged." Tors leaned back in his chair. "The political implications are staggering. If we successfully integrate with society, it could change humanity's entire approach to alien contact. But if we mess this up, we could damage relations with the first advanced species we've encountered," Sarah finished. "The stakes couldn't be higher." "There's something else to consider," Dr. Santos said quietly. "The cubs clearly want this. They've bonded with you, Captain, in a way that seems significant for their species. Rejecting them now could have psychological consequences we can't predict." Sarah rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. "What does everyone think, honestly?" "I think it's crazy," Tors said bluntly. "We're explorers, not teachers. We don't know the first thing about raising alien children." "But that might be exactly what they need," Wu countered. "Fresh perspectives, new ways of thinking. Their own people acknowledge that their traditional methods might be limiting their development." "The potential for scientific advancement is enormous," Dr. Santos added. "And personally, those cubs have gotten under my skin. I find myself wanting to help them succeed." Sarah looked around the table at her senior officers, people she had served with for years, whose judgment she trusted completely. Their conflicted expressions reflected her own internal struggle. A soft chime from the intercom interrupted her thoughts. "Captain, to the observation deck, please," came Ensign Park's voice. "There's something you need to see." Sarah and her officers made their way to the observation deck, where they found Park standing with the 6 cubs. All of them were pressed against the windows, staring out at the alien world below. "What's the situation, Ensign?" Sarah asked. Park gestured toward the cubs. "They've been here for the past hour, just watching their world turn. I thought you should see this." Sarah looked more closely at the young and realized they weren't just sightseeing. Their body language spoke of deep contemplation, and she could hear them talking quietly among themselves in voices too low for the translation devices to pick up. Kay noticed her approach and turned from the window. "Captain Sarah, may I ask you something important?" "Of course." The young's blue eyes were serious beyond her apparent years. "Do you think we're worth the risk?" The question caught Sarah completely off guard. "What do you mean?" "We know this is difficult for you," R said, stepping up beside Kay. "Staying here, teaching us, it changes your mission, your life, your future. We want to know if you think we're worth that sacrifice." Sarah felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "You're all worth it," she said without hesitation. "The question isn't whether you're worth the risk, it's whether I'm capable of being what you need." The smallest cub patted over and took Sarah's hand in her small, furry paw. "You already are," she said simply. "You saved us from being afraid of humans. Before you came, the adults said aliens would be dangerous and strange, but you're just you." "Kind," added L. "Brave," said N. "Smart," contributed. "Different," concluded K, "but good different." Sarah looked at her senior officers and saw her own decision reflected in their faces. Dr. Santos was wiping away tears, Wu was grinning despite himself, and even Tors looked moved by the cub's simple eloquence. "Well," Sarah said, her voice slightly hoarse, "I guess that settles it." The cubs erupted in cheers that could probably be heard throughout half the ship. Sarah found herself surrounded by small, warm bodies as all 6 young tried to hug her simultaneously. Over their heads, she caught Tor's eye. "Send a message to Earth Command," she said. "Tell them we've encountered a peaceful alien species and have been invited to participate in a cultural exchange program. We'll be extending our mission by 2 years." "What about the potential consequences?" Tors asked. Sarah looked down at the excited cubs clustering around her and felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. "Some risks are worth taking," she said. "This is one of them." As the cubs chattered excitedly about their future adventures, Sarah gazed out at the alien world that was about to become her temporary home. The decision was made, but she sensed that the real challenges were only beginning. The next morning brought new complications that Sarah hadn't anticipated. She was awakened by urgent knocking on her temporary quarters aboard the ship, followed by Dr. Santos's voice calling through the door. "Captain, you need to come to the medical bay immediately. We have a situation with one of the cubs." Sarah dressed quickly and hurried to find the smallest of the cubs, lying unconscious on one of the medical beds. The other 5 cubs were clustered nearby, their ears flat against their heads in obvious distress. "What happened?" Sarah asked, moving to the small form on the bed. "We found her collapsed outside the ship this morning," Dr. Santos explained, running a medical scanner over the cub's body. "Her vital signs are stable, but she's completely unresponsive. I've never seen anything like it." Ra, the healer, arrived within minutes of being called. The alien doctor's examination was swift but thorough, involving both technological scanners and what appeared to be some form of bioelectric sensing. "Bonding shock," Ra diagnosed grimly. "It is rare but not unknown among our young." "Bonding shock?" Sarah asked. "When cubs become emotionally attached to someone who then rejects them, it can cause a psychological collapse," the healer explained. "Their developing minds literally shut down to protect themselves from the trauma." "But I didn't reject her," Sarah protested. "I agreed to the arrangement." Kay spoke up from beside the bed, her voice small and scared. "She heard the adults talking last night. They said humans might leave anyway, that you might change your mind and abandon us." Sarah felt her heart sink. "Who said that?" "War leader and some of the others," En replied. "They were arguing about whether trusting aliens was wise. I got scared that you would decide we weren't worth staying for." Ra looked up from her patient. "Cubs of her age are especially vulnerable to abandonment fears. The bonding process with a new pack leader is delicate. Her mind couldn't process the possibility of loss, so it simply stopped." "How do we fix it?" Sarah asked urgently. "The bond must be completed and secured," the healer said. "In our culture, this would require a formal adoption ceremony, making the attachment permanent and unbreakable." Dr. Santos frowned. "What exactly would that involve?" Ra hesitated. "It would mean Captain formally accepts responsibility for all 6 cubs as her own offspring. By law, they would become her children in every legal sense." Sarah felt the world shift around her. Adopting alien children was far beyond anything she had considered when accepting the teaching position. "There has to be another way," Dr. Santos said. "There is," Ra admitted reluctantly. "But it would require Captain to remain in constant physical proximity until the cub's mind accepts the security of her presence. It could take days or weeks." Sarah looked at the small, unconscious form on the medical bed and made another decision that would change her life forever. "Prepare for the adoption ceremony," she said quietly. The formal adoption took place that evening in the heart of the city, within a sacred grove where bioluminescent trees cast ethereal light across ancient stone circles. Sarah had been dressed in ceremonial robes that felt strange against her skin, their organic fabric seeming to shift and flow with her movements. The 6 cubs stood with her in the center of the circle, awake but still pale and weak from her ordeal. Around them, hundreds had gathered to witness this unprecedented event, the formal adoption of their young by an alien. Served as the ceremonial leader, his voice carrying clearly through the grove as he spoke the ancient words of bonding. The language was beautiful, full of musical tones and harmonics that seemed to resonate with the very trees around them. Do you, Sarah of the star-walking humans, accept these cubs as your own blood, to guide and protect until they achieve full maturity? Sarah's voice was steady as she replied, I do. Will you teach them wisdom, courage, and honor according to your understanding? I will. Will you defend them with your life and love them as a mother loves her children? Sarah looked at the 6 young faces turned up toward her, seeing trust and hope and desperate need in their alien features. I will. Raised a ceremonial blade that gleamed with an inner light. Then let the bonding be sealed in the old way. Sarah offered her hand, trying not to flinch as the blade drew a thin line of blood across her palm. Each cub did the same, their smaller hands steady despite their youth. One by one, they pressed their bloodied palms to hers, mixing their life essence in the ancient ritual of adoption. The moment A's small hand touched Sarah's, the change was immediate and profound. Sarah felt something shift inside her mind, a warmth, a presence, a connection she had never experienced before. The cubs gasped in unison, their eyes wide with wonder. The bond is complete, announced. By blood and will and sacred oath, these cubs are now children of Sarah. May the ancestors guide this new family. The crowd erupted in celebration, but Sarah barely heard them. The connection she felt to the cubs was overwhelming. She could sense their emotions, their health, their general well-being as if they were extensions of her own body. What's happening to me? She whispered to Ra, who was standing nearby. The bonding creates a psychic link, the healer explained. It is how parents maintain connection to their young across distance and danger. You are now truly their mother in every sense that matters. As the ceremonies continued around them, Sarah found herself surrounded by 6 cubs who looked at her with new eyes. The change in their behavior was immediate. They moved closer to her, touched her more frequently, and seemed to relax in her presence in a way they never had before. Later that night, as Sarah tried to process everything that had happened, she found her new children gathered in her quarters. They had somehow moved their sleeping arrangements from their family groups to be near her, creating a small nest of blankets and cushions around her bed. Are you okay, Mom? Kay asked, using the human term that somehow felt perfectly natural. Sarah looked at the concerned faces of her alien children and realized that, despite everything, she felt more at peace than she had in years. I'm fine, she said, settling down among them. We're all fine. But as she drifted off to sleep surrounded by the soft breathing of 6 young aliens, Sarah couldn't help wondering what Earth Command would say when they learned their star captain had become a mother to an alien species. The challenges, she suspected, were only beginning. The first major test of Sarah's new role came 2 weeks later, when territorial disputes erupted in the northern provinces. War leader had been called away to mediate conflicts between rival hunting clans, leaving the capital city's defenses in the hands of younger, less experienced warriors. Sarah was in the middle of teaching the cubs about human mathematics when the emergency alarms began wailing across the city. The bone-deep thrumming sound sent the cubs into immediate defensive postures, their ears flat and bodies low. What's happening? Sarah asked, moving instinctively to put herself between her children and potential danger. Kay's nostrils flared as she tested the air. Scent markers, strange ones, not. Before Sarah could ask more questions, his voice crackled over the communication system. All pack leaders to defensive positions. Unknown vessels approaching from the outer system. Intent unknown. Sarah's blood chilled. In the 2 weeks since the adoption, she had begun to think of herself as a teacher and mother first, starship captain second. But this emergency snapped her back into military thinking. Stay here, she told the cubs firmly. Don't leave this room until I come back. But Mom, N protested, we can help. Absolutely not. This is adult business. Sarah rushed to the nearest communication terminal and contacted her ship. Tor's face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. Captain, we're tracking 3 ships entering the system. Configuration unknown, but they're not responding to hails, and their course suggests hostile intent. Can you get the Meridian's edge powered up? Negative. The hyperspace motivator is still in pieces, and most of our defensive systems are offline for repairs. Sarah cursed under her breath. Then we defend from the ground, get all personnel into the city and coordinate with security forces." As she ended the transmission, Sarah became aware of 6 small forms shadowing her movements. The cubs had ignored her direct order and followed her anyway. "I told you to stay put," she said sternly. "Pack doesn't abandon pack leader," R said solemnly. "Ancient law." "Cubs don't fight adult battles," Sarah countered. "Cubs observe and learn," Kay said. "Also ancient law, and you're going into danger, so we go too." Sarah didn't have time to argue. The sound of atmospheric entry was already rumbling overhead as unknown ships descended toward the planet's surface. The defense of the capital would become the stuff of legend among both species, though neither Sarah nor her cubs understood that at the time. What they experienced was chaos, terror, and the desperate need to protect their adopted home. The attacking ships landed in the plains outside the city, disgorging troops that looked like nothing in any database. They moved like bipedal insects, with chitinous armor that gleamed black in the sunlight and weapons that fired coherent energy beams. Raiders, identified grimly as defensive positions, were established along the city's outer walls. "We thought they had been driven from this sector decades ago." Sarah crouched behind a barricade made from the same living stone as the buildings, her cubs clustered around her. Each of them carried emergency supplies and basic tools, but nothing that could be considered a weapon. "What do they want?" she asked. "Slaves," replied. "They consume other species young to accelerate their own reproduction cycle. Cubs are their primary target." Sarah felt ice form in her veins. She looked at her 6 children, seeing their terrified but determined faces, and knew she would die before letting anything happen to them. The first assault came at dawn, waves of soldiers advancing across open ground toward the city walls. Defenders met them with energy weapons and claw-to-claw combat, their feline agility giving them advantages in close-quarters fighting. But they had overwhelming numbers. For every raider that fell, 2 more took their place. The defensive lines began to buckle under the relentless pressure. "We need to retreat to the inner city," announced as explosions rocked the outer walls. During the withdrawal, disaster struck. A group of Had flanked the main defensive positions and emerged directly in the path of the retreating civilians. Sarah found herself cut off from the main group with her 6 cubs, facing a squad of armed raiders with nothing but her bare hands. The lead clicked and chittered in its own language, but the translator rendered its words in chilling clarity. "Young ones, perfect for consumption, seize them." Sarah stepped in front of her children, knowing she was hopelessly outmatched. They were larger than humans, armored and armed with weapons that could cut through steel. But she had underestimated her cubs. "Attack formation 7, Kay said quietly, and suddenly the 6 young were moving with coordinated precision that took Sarah's breath away. They had been practicing. While she taught them mathematics and human philosophy, they had been training together in combat formations based on pack hunting techniques. Now those lessons saved all their lives. Ellen went high, scrambling up the walls with feline agility to attack from above. N and R flanked left and right, their smaller size allowing them to slip past the raiders' guard. Kay and Little stayed with Sarah, protecting her flanks as she engaged the lead attacker. The battle was brief but vicious. The cubs fought with a ferocity that shocked their enemies, using speed and teamwork to overcome superior strength and armor. Sarah found herself fighting alongside them rather than protecting them, her human tactics complementing their natural abilities. When the last fell, Sarah looked at her children with new eyes. They were no longer just cubs she was teaching. They were warriors in their own right, capable of holding their own in combat. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" she asked as they regrouped. "You did," Kay replied, panting heavily. "Human tactics instincts, we combined them. And we practiced every night after you went to sleep," N added with a grin that showed his developing fangs. Sarah realized that while she had been teaching them about human knowledge, they had been teaching themselves how to synthesize it with their own abilities. The result was something neither species could have achieved alone. The siege of the capital lasted 3 days. Throughout the fighting, Sarah and her cubs operated as a family unit that seemed to anticipate each other's moves with uncanny precision. Their success in small unit actions caught the attention of other families, and soon they were being asked to coordinate multiple groups. By the time war leader returned with reinforcements to break the siege, Sarah found herself functioning as a fact military commander. The irony wasn't lost on her. The weak human who had barely defeated one warrior was now directing the defense of their most important city. The victory celebration that followed was unlike anything in history. For the first time, an alien had fought alongside them as family rather than ally. Sarah's cubs had proven themselves in battle, but more importantly, they had proven the value of their hybrid approach to combat and tactics. "You have honored our traditions while creating new ones," told Sarah as the festivities continued around them. "Your children have shown us possibilities we never imagined." Sarah watched her cubs interacting with other young, sharing stories of the battle, and demonstrating the techniques they had developed. Already, other families were asking if their children could train with Sarah's cubs. "I think," Sarah said slowly, "we're going to need a bigger school." 1 year had passed since the siege, and the changes to society were profound. What had begun as an experiment in cross-species education had evolved into something unprecedented, a new way of thinking that was spreading throughout their civilization. Sarah stood in the observation tower of the Academy of Integrated Learning, watching dozens of young practice combat formations in the courtyard below. Her original 6 cubs had become instructors, teaching other youngsters the hybrid techniques they had developed. The sight filled her with pride and a touch of amazement at how far they had all come. "The Galactic Council has responded to our diplomatic overtures," announced as he joined her at the window. The Prime Hunter had aged in the past year, but his golden eyes still held their sharp intelligence. "They are intrigued by our reports of successful human integration." Sarah turned from the window, nodding the tension in his voice. "That doesn't sound like unqualified good news. Several species have expressed interest in meeting humans directly, but there are also concerns about the changes we've reported in our own society. Some view rapid cultural evolution as potentially destabilizing." The Academy represented one of the most visible changes. What had started with 6 cubs learning human mathematics had grown into a comprehensive educational institution where young learned to think in new ways. Traditional education focused on instinct, strength, and territorial dominance. The Academy taught problem-solving, technological innovation, and cooperative strategies. The results were remarkable. Young trained in human methodologies were developing solutions to problems that had stumped their elders for generations. Food production was up 30% thanks to agricultural techniques that combined human precision with biotechnology. Energy systems were more efficient, transportation was faster, and conflict resolution was increasingly handled through negotiation rather than combat. But change always created resistance. "War leader has requested a meeting," continued. "He's returned from the border territories with disturbing reports." "What kind of reports?" Before could answer, a commotion in the courtyard drew their attention. Sarah looked down to see her cubs, now young adults by standards, in heated discussion with a group of older she didn't recognize. The strangers wore the distinctive armor of outer territory warriors, and their body language spoke of aggressive confrontation. "I should go down there," Sarah said, but caught her arm. "Let them handle it. They need to learn to defend their ideas without your protection." Sarah watched anxiously as Kay stepped forward to face the lead warrior. Now nearly adult height, her eldest daughter had grown into a formidable presence. Her silver-blue fur gleamed in the sunlight, and her voice carried clearly across the courtyard. "You question our methods without understanding them," Kay said calmly. "Perhaps you would like a demonstration." The older warrior, battle-hardened and twice Kay's size, laughed harshly. "Demonstrations of weakness. Your soft human ways have corrupted the old strengths." "The old strengths remain," En interjected, moving to flank his sister. "We have simply added new ones." What followed was not the brutal combat Sarah feared, but something far more elegant. Her cubs arranged themselves in a formation she had never seen before, then began to demonstrate a series of movements that flowed seamlessly between human tactical principles and pack hunting instincts. The visiting warriors watched with growing amazement as the 6 young adults moved like a single organism, each action perfectly coordinated with the others. It was beautiful, deadly, and unlike anything in traditional martial arts. "This is what our children learn," R explained as the demonstration concluded. Not replacement of our nature, but enhancement of it. We are still hunters, still warriors, but we are more. The lead visiting warrior stood silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I would like to see more of these techniques. Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Below, Elle was already beginning to explain the theoretical foundations behind their hybrid approach, her natural teaching instincts taking over. They don't need me to fight their battles anymore, Sarah realized aloud. No, agreed, but they still need you for what comes next. The meeting with War Leader took place that evening in his private chambers, a stark room decorated with weapons and trophies from decades of military campaigns. Sarah arrived to find him studying holographic displays of star maps and military reports. Captain, he said without turning from the displays, or should I say, Pack Leader, your status has become complex. Just Sarah is fine, she replied, taking the seat he indicated. Said you have disturbing reports from the border regions. Finally turned to face her, and Sarah was shocked by the weariness in his features. 3 border settlements have been attacked in the past month, not by raiders or any known species. He gestured to the holographic displays, which showed images of destroyed buildings and strange blast patterns. The attackers used weapons we've never encountered before. Energy signatures are completely unknown. Worse, they seem to target specifically educational and cultural facilities. Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. They're targeting the Academy expansion sites. Indeed, 4 new Academy installations have been established in border territories over the past 6 months, bringing hybrid education to outlying populations. All 4 have now been destroyed. The implications were staggering. Someone is specifically targeting the integration program. The question is why, said grimly, and who? Before Sarah could respond, an urgent chime echoed through the chamber, activated his communication system, revealing his concerned face. War Leader, we have an immediate situation. Captain should hear this as well. What's happened? Sarah asked. Kay and the other cubs have disappeared from the academy. They left a message saying they were going to investigate the attacks personally. Sarah felt her maternal bond with the cubs flare to life, sensing their determined presence somewhere far from the city. They were alive, unharmed, but definitely in danger. How long have they been gone? Demanded. No more than 2 hours, but Sarah, there's something else. We've detected unknown ships entering the outer system. Multiple contacts heading directly for the next few hours blurred together in a haze of preparation and growing dread. The unknown ships proved to be a fleet of vessels unlike any in the databases, sleek, angular designs that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They established orbit without responding to communication attempts, then began deploying what appeared to be sensor arrays. They're scanning the planet, Chief Wu reported from the partially repaired Meridian's edge, looking for something specific. Sarah studied the sensor readings from the Academy's command center, surrounded by worried officials and her own crew members. The enemy ship's technology was advanced, possibly beyond either human or capabilities. They're looking for the hybrid programs, she realized suddenly. The integration sites, the Academy, anywhere human and cultures are mixing. The archive keeper looked up from their studies. That suggests these attackers have detailed intelligence about our recent cultural changes. Someone has been watching us for months. The first communication from the unknown fleet came 6 hours after their arrival. The transmission appeared simultaneously on every screen in the city, showing a figure that made Sarah's blood run cold. The being on screen was tall, graceful, and undeniably humanoid, but wrong in subtle ways that made her skin crawl. Its proportions were slightly off, its movements too fluid, its eyes too bright and knowing. When it spoke, the voice was cultured and pleasant, which somehow made it